So, George, when we last left off, he was sitting in front of you. He was sitting in front of you, and you slapped him.
Yep. What
happened?
Well, it was that applause and in the noise. It just went everywhere. And it's an acoustically designed building. I mean, it just went everywhere. And I knew it went everywhere. It was an instant. Can I just have that back? I mean, I would give anything to not have done that, you know, please. And because I knew I was going into deep, I knew I was going to territory I'd never been before.
Right.
I had never done anything this outrageous before. And it got worse. I mean, the guy went crazy. He jumped up in his seat, and he turned around and facing me, standing in his seat, and throws his arms up in the air and screams like you've never heard anybody scream. And I'm seeking quiet at this point. Is all I want is quiet and to be left alone. And this guy's screaming and then diving over the top of me, on me, still screaming, kicking, thrashing, trying to bite the top of my head. And I shoved my feet under the seat, just a reaction. I shoved my feet under the seat ahead of me and my arms between the seat that I was sitting in, where they were grabbed by the people behind me. So I'm just pinned in this seat. I can't move. And I got this guy in my lap who's just going crazy. Yeah. And just screaming and screaming. And we were grabbed. You know, the people around us reacted and grabbed us, and they just passed us down the aisles out to the out to the aisle, where all of these drill instructors were. They just had materialized. They'd just come out of nowhere. These guys, there were a couple dozen of them, and they picked me up and they hoisted me up in the air, and I could see it was like a sea of Smokey Bear hats, and I'm up above it, and we're just bobbling out the door out into the street, you know. And standing at attention and just being screamed at by these people. It had gotten dark outside, and the street lights were on, and they just screamed at us. We just stood there at attention, and they just screamed, and they would take turns screaming. There would be 4 or 5 of them screaming at once, and then they would, you know, it was just insane. And I was so full of adrenaline. I was so frightened. I had never triggered anything like that before. And right in the point,
you knew you were in trouble.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't have time to even focus that much.
Yeah.
You're just completely you're living in the moment.
Okay.
And you're just looking for a way out. I mean, you're searching for your own salvation. And it's you got your brains working all the time. I mean, you learn this as a delinquent too. You know, you learn the places to look where you're going to try to look for sympathy, where you're going to try to look for help, where you're going to look for a mistake, where you're going to try to look for anything to get yourself free again. And if I was in any mode, it was that. And all of a sudden, blam! The doors on the building just blow open again, and it's dark outside, and the light from inside comes out the door, out into the street, and it's just filled with music. It's the Marine Band, and they're playing John Philip Sousa, and it's just incredible. It's an incredible sound, and right through the middle of this light comes this Marine drill team in their dress blues, and they're all senior NCOs. There's 8 of them, and they're commanded by the sergeant major, and he's marching them out of the auditorium after performing in front of the general and his family and the whole base. And this guy is pretty hyped. You know, this may be one of the big moments of his whole life.
Yeah.
You know, he just put a Marine drill team through their paces in front of the whole Marine base, and they come out through this light and down the thing. The door's shut. He halts his drill team, dismisses them, and he walks over to talk to 201, who's standing there at attention. all this, the senior, the NCO guys, they come over and stare at me. I mean, they just glare at me. You know, these guys, they know that we're in trouble, and they come over and glare at me. They're just waiting for him to come over. He talks to 201. He's there maybe, you know, a minute or two, not very long, because I'm just trying to get control of myself. And he turns when he comes around 201, and he's facing me. He's coming towards me, and you instantly know that he's insane. He's insane. You can see it on. You can see everything about it on him. His face is the wrong color. It's distorted. He's angry. It looked like his nostrils. I remember his nostrils looked like a bull. His nostrils look as big as his eyes. I mean, he is insane. And he's looking at me, and he just comes at me. And he runs at me. He screams at me. He puts his fists in my face, and he's screaming. When the drill instructors scream at you, you can hear the words. I mean, they're really loud, but you can hear them. You know, you can hear the names. You can hear we can hear everything that they say. But with this guy, it was just gobbledygook. It was just he had just lost it. It was incoherent, screaming at the top of his lungs. He's screaming at me and shaking his fist. And he would come at me, and his arms would go out, and he looked like a big fat goose. I remember with those dress blues on and the medals, and the medals would clank when he would go forward. They would come out and they'd crash. Sound like shopping carts. He had so many of them. I mean, this guy had been in the Marines for a very. Whoops! I just did this. Oops, sorry.
Easy.
This guy had been in the Marines.
Hold it, wait.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I did it.
No.
We'll get it. Hang on, kids.
So this guy had been.
So this guy had been in the Marines, at least 25 years, probably more. He'd been through a couple world wars. He had seen everything that you could see. I mean, this is a combat Marine, and he was insane. He just went insane. Whatever 201 said to him made him insane. And he never, I never spoke. I was never questioned. I never asked me anything. He just came at me. And I couldn't understand what he's saying. I couldn't understand a word he's saying, and nobody else could either. And the NCO buddies, they're all trying to get a hold of him and lead him off. I mean, he needs to lay down somewhere. And they're trying to get him to back up a little bit. And then they'd lead him away a little bit, and then he'd break away and he'd run back at me and scream some more, and just scream. And he started to become a little bit more coherent. You could start to understand the words. And it all revolved around, I had disgraced the Marine Corps. I had disgraced the general and his family. His general and his family. I had disgraced him and his family. I had disgraced everyone on the base and their family. and he wouldn't allow that. He would not allow that to happen. I had to be stopped, and he would stop me. His beloved Corps would not allow it to be disgraced. And he would say this over and over, and then he would scream it at me that he would stop me. He would stop me. And again, nobody ever said what it was that I had done. It never came up, and nobody asked me what I had done. It was enough that he said that I had done it, period. And when he did that, everybody else, they didn't need to go any further than that. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? And they didn't need to go any further than that. And they came down on me like a truck. And then it got really bad, because he stood back a little bit, and he looked at us, and he said, "Put them under arrest." Well, Jesus Christ, this is boot camp, and I'm under arrest in boot, and take them to the duty hut. So they queued us up, me and 201, and they had 4 drill instructors, one in front, one behind, one on each flank, and we take off double time and across the grinder, heading for the duty hut, under arrest. And I mean, I had come in to the Marines. I'd come in underage. I was running from a district judge. I was trying to get, like the old black guy said, I was looking for mercy, and mercy was the Marines. I was trying to escape justice, and here I am. You know, my mom had just written me I'd gotten a letter from my mom a week before. She was telling me how proud she was that when the cops had come looking for me, she had told them I couldn't possibly have done it, and she knew I couldn't.
for once.
Yeah, for once. And she talked about how good that it made her feel to know absolutely certain that I had not been involved in that one. And I'm under arrest, heading for the, you know, I'm thinking about that. And like a good delinquent, you always try to figure out what's going to happen to you if you fail. Whenever you get in something, that's one of the first things you say, what are they going to do to me if I steal the car or something? What's going to happen, you know? And what happened to the last guy that they caught doing that? And we had come up with it, we had the notion that if you failed in boot camp, they would take you to the front gate. They had a drummer. They'd drum you out the front gate in a uniform with no insignia. They would put you'd have a Marine uniform, but it wouldn't be a Marine uniform. It would have no insignia on it. And then a bus ticket to your town that you had joined from, which was Butte, Montana for me. And off you go. And so I thought that I was either going to the brig or that I was going back to Butte. And neither one of them were that was horrible. To fail in boot camp would have been, I was one of the first things I realized could actually stain my life. That I had done something that could cause a lifelong problem for me. And that was very frightening. Nobody could get me out of this. Nobody could save me. I was going down the tubes right now. I was heading for the brig or the front gate. And these guys were serious. They were just totally serious. And so we take off. We're heading for the duty hut. The six of us blow through the main hatch in the duty hut. Corporal the guard sitting at his desk. He jumps up. We halt. 201 is put by the main hatch by the front door. He stands at attention there. Nobody ever talked to him again. Nobody ever asked him a question. Nobody said anything to him. He just stood there for the whole evening. Nothing. I go to the other end with all the drill instructors, and they're screaming at me, and the exercising starts. They start doing the exercises, and push-ups, squat jumps, sit-ups, all of this stuff. And these guys are really good at it, too. They know exactly how much you can do, how many you can do before they have to change you over to something else. And they just keep it going. And they just can wring you out with this. They basically tell you how to torture yourself, and you do it. You just do it because you're told to do it, and that's what you do is you do what you're told, and you do this. Right. So this is going on, and all of a sudden the sergeant major and his dress blues drill team, they show up. They come over. He got so excited on the other side that he had to come over and finish his speech. And I'm doing push-ups, and as the drill inspector stops screaming as soon as these guys show up again, and the sergeant major comes to where I'm at. He's got to stand there with his back to me. He's got all of these people, drill instructors, and all these dress blues guys stand in front of him, and he just makes his speech to them about how much he loves the Corps. And the Corps is his life. He would do anything, give anything. The Marine Corps, and then he would turn and point at me, and I was just this disgrace. I was just a disgrace. I had disgraced the thing that he loved, and I would not be allowed to do that. And he would do that, and then he would go back and make his speech again, and they're all, and he gets done, and he moves off to the side. The master sergeant comes up, and he does the same thing. He makes a speech about how much he loves the Corps, and I will not be allowed to disgrace that. And he was screaming at me and pointing at me about what a disgrace I am, and how it went all the way down the ranks to the staff sergeant. they're all talking about, they all tell each other how much they love the Marines and how I'm not going to be allowed to interfere with that. And then they leave. They just up and leave. They get all this is out of their systems, and they go off to wherever they're going. And I'm left with all the drill instructors. And there's at least a dozen drill instructors still left in that hut. And they're not giving up on this one, yeah. Yeah. And so once the breast booths leave, these guys are all E4s, they're all buck sergeants. It's the old corps, and they're on their own. So they're lighting up cigars. They all know each other. It's all very relaxed. They got no problems, and they got me. And they would talk. They didn't even scream at me very much anymore. They'd kind of lost that and kind of been worn out, I think. And I was so exhausted that I couldn't do any more exercises. I couldn't stand up. And so they just started putting me in positions and doing things to me that was painful, things that were really, really stressful. And that they would, and I would be told okay.
No, 10 minutes.
Oh, you got another 10?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But then we're going to be a hard stop.
Oh, yeah. No, I think I can wrap this baby up.
Okay, so go back to the last words you were saying.
Oh, yeah.
Smoking cigars.
Oh, yeah. They're all relaxed, and they're just starting to figure out what to do with me. And they're talking to each other about, well, we can do this and we can do that. And they're coming up with stuff from their past that, boy, I bet that hurt. They're going to do it to me, and they do. And it just starts off that way, and I can't really even remember what the first ones were. But then I do remember ending up in the invisible chair. And the invisible chair is where you put your back against the bulkhead, and you got your hands out,
right.
And you're just pretending there's a chair that isn't there.
Right. And
you stay in that position as long as you can until you collapse, and then they pick you up and put you back in it, and you do it again. And then they didn't punch us. They didn't punch us. They always expressed a certain regret that they weren't allowed to do that. And but only occasionally they would kick us. Mostly it wasn't physical. They had you do it to yourself. They didn't have to do it to you because they could make you do it. But they would kick you when you were in the invisible chair. You get kicked right in the thigh. Right, and that would cause these huge cramps, and your legs just buckle up, and down you go, and then they slam you back in, or they pull your legs out straight, get the cramp straightened out, and then they stick you back in there. As long as they can, as long as you can maintain even for a few seconds, you're going back in the chair. And then when that's over, you can't do that anymore. So they have this wall lockers, and they put me in the wall locker. And I was bigger than the wall locker was small, but they just stuff you in there like you're baloney. And you have to it's very, very important that you get your head turned the right way when you're going in, because you got to try to get your mouth towards the
I got claustrophobia, so that doesn't sound good.
And then they shut the door, and it takes all of them to shut the door on you, and you're stuffed in this wall locker. And you can't breathe right because your shoulders are pushed together. And so you start passing out pretty early because you're exhausted and all that sort of stuff. And they beat on the outside of it and scream and holler and tell you what they're going to do to you. A lot of threats. And then when you pass out, and they seem to know when that is, and the thing about passing out, the passing out isn't as bad because you don't really realize you're passing out. And when you come to, you feel kind of good about the whole thing, about, oh, man, I can see again. And so you're not in the wall locker. You come to out of the wall locker, and they stick you back in the wall locker. And we did that for a number of times. And at some point, one of these guys got the bright idea of blowing cigar smoke into the bottom vents of the locker while you're in there. And that really, you have to breathe really short, little breaths, because you can't take it in. Your lungs will seize. Your lungs will start bucking, you start coughing. You can't do that. You can't let yourself cough. You can't let yourself vomit. You can't let yourself piss your pants. You can't let yourself cry out. You can't do these things. And that's really what your job is, to not do any of those things. The rest of it, they take care of. And you're in and out of that wall locker with the cigar smoke. And then it was the garbage can. They had a garbage can, and you sit on the deck and you suck your knees up to your chest, and they put the garbage can over the top of you, and they beat on it. And then they blow a little smoke in on the bottoms, and that was maybe even worse than the wall locker. And you pass out, and they bring you to, and then you do it again, and you pass out, and then they do this until they get tired of it. And you become kind of incoherent. You don't really know where you are or what's happening, and you're just hanging on. And they do then I can still hear the guy, and I can still hear the guy say that, let's put him in the cherry position. And somehow I knew that wasn't good. That wasn't going to be good. Anything named the cherry position is not going to be good. And you're on your knees on the deck, and you turn your heels in, and you sit back on your heels. They're facing each other. And you put your hands behind your head, and you go over backwards. And when your body's shot, and you're all cramps and everything, it really hurts. It just feels like, I thought I was ruining my knees. It was hard not to scream out that I was ruining my knees. And, we did that, and then they walk on you, and they stand on you, and they scream at you. And then that went on for a while, and then they left. They just up and left. The drill instructors, they just walked out the hatch. They're laughing and joking on their way to the slop chute to have a beer. And they're gone. And it's just me, 201, and the corporal of the guard. And I'm on the deck. I can't stand up, and I'm trying to get up, and the corporal comes over, and I still don't know what's going to happen to me. And the corporal comes over, and he helps me get to my feet. He just actually helped pick me up, and then he held me against the bulkhead while I got my legs working, and then he asked me if I was okay, and he did it like a person. Are you okay? He spoke to me, and then nobody had spoken to me since I'd been in boot camp. There'd never been a personal contact, and he did it. Are you okay? And he was concerned. Are you okay? And I knew then I could talk to him. So I asked him for permission to speak. He gave it, and I don't know where it came from, because I hadn't thought about any of this. I just blurted it out, and it came out in total Marine talk. They love Marine talk. And it was, that private was falling asleep. This private was waking him up. Sir, that private, you did all the sirs. And I got it out. And it just hit him. He just stopped, because falling asleep was a big deal. And he kind of realized that maybe this they hadn't done the wrong guy, And he said, "Can you back that up?" "Yes, sir." And the guide was there. So he sent for the guide. The guide comes, who doesn't know anything about what's going on. And he tells my story. I was waking the guy up. And then he attacked me. So it's like, all of a sudden I got breathing room. And you can see the corporal. He just goes over and sits down. He's thinking, And I'm thinking, it's like when you're in deep water, you can see light, and you're going for light. And I've just got a chance, or I got a chance. And the corporal... he sits there for a while, and then he looks at 201, and he says, "Get out." That was all he said, was just "Get out." 201 disappeared. He's gone. And he turned to me, and he said, "You stay where you're at. I want him out of the area before I turn you loose. I don't want you going after him." Well, I had never considered going after him. It never dawned on me to go after him. But the idea that he thought I would meant something really huge. It was really big to me that he thought only a real Marine would do that.
Right.
Only a real Marine would go after that. You'd have to be crazy.
Would take that beating and then still be.
Yeah, and go back after the guy and get another one, Like he thought that I was that kind of guy. He thought, man, it was just like I was restored. And he sat there for a little bit, and then he turned to me, and he said, "Get the fuck out of here, maggot." And he smiled at me. And I was gone. And it was over. The whole thing was over. I wasn't going to the brig. I wasn't going to Butte. I was going back to my rack.
It was just done.
It was done. Everything was done. It never came up again. There was never anything to do with it again, except I run into the guy later. A couple
201?
Yeah, I ran into 201 later. I got my revenge. I scared him again. I didn't corner him.
No.
I never do that again. You know, never ever corner a coward. They'll eat a hole in you. They will just eat a hole in you. You'll be standing there just offering yourself up for sacrifice. It's awful. It's just awful. And I did it. I just did it. But when I came out of it, the corporal made everything work again.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I would stick with that corporal anywhere. He was my friend. He understood. And not only, the feeling was I was almost a Marine. I'd almost made it.
Right.
Yeah. I was going to have graduation, and then I was going to be the real thing. And at that age, wearing a Marine uniform in public is a big deal.
Right.
And it's a real big deal. It ain't junior English. It ain't junior English.